Namaskar, welcome. Today's discourse is about occult powers, where they come from, what they're really for, how they can help us spiritually, and how they can help us serve others. I think we've all heard our guru's teachings that you shouldn't strive after occult powers. However, in this discourse, we hear how they just come naturally as a result of practicing meditation, and that their real purpose is to help us develop ourselves spiritually and also to help us help other people develop themselves. So I've called it, the original title is Cult, Inference, and Propensity. And the title that I've given it is The Gift of Occult Powers for Social Service and Spiritual Progress. So let's get started. The subject of today's discourse is cult, inference, and propensity. The path that leads or drives the spiritual aspirant towards Paramapurusha, the Supreme Consciousness, is cult in the true spirit of the term. Where the goal is something finite, where the object of thinking is something limited, the path and the movement cannot be treated as cult. You who are genuine spiritualists should practice spiritual cult, thinking that by doing so you will become effective in maintaining the universal balance. You must think, I will personally move towards the supreme goal, and at the same time, I will try to assist those who are suffering from despair, those stuck in blind superstition, and those drowning in poverty. Our family is universal. Our home is also universal. This spiritual cult is the only cult. Others are not cult, they are mere dogma. If the cult is proper, if it is cult in the true spirit of the term, it creates a sort of subtlety in one's mental flow. Under such circumstances, we receive necessary help from positive microvita. This help that we receive by means of our spiritual practices is composed of 8 occult powers. These powers are known as occult because they are acquired through cult. But while acquiring these occult or so-called miraculous powers, we cannot do anything without the help of positive microvita. These occult powers are anima, lagima, mahima, ishitva, vashitva, prakamya, prapti, and antarya mitva. Anima means converting one's psychic existence into a small point, and then transforming it into a minimum entity. One may understand anything by entering into each and every physical particle and becoming one with the different waves of expression and emanation, by dancing with the wavelengths of objects or ideas. Unless and until one's very psychic existence is converted into a point, one cannot move or dance according to the wavelengths of the particular idea or ideas. This occult power acquired through positive microvita is called anima. Lagima makes the mind light, free from the bondages of so many liabilities. This carefree mind, free from the fetters of materialistic bondages, can understand and think properly. So, by dint of this occult power, one may understand any idea subtle or crude, in the abstract realm. Unless you understand how much pain and sorrow is accumulated in others' minds, how many tears well up in their eyes, you cannot alleviate their sorrows and sufferings. Through Lagima, you can acquire this particular power to study others' minds. The third one is Mahima, or expansion of mind. With the help of positive microvita, mind can be expanded. The radius of the mind may cover the entire universe. And we may have ideas about different subjects, even without reading books and literature. And this way, too, we may feel our oneness with the varied entities of this universe. Unity in variety, unity in diversity. By associating our benevolent thoughts with each and every entity, we will contribute to universal progress and prosperity. Ishitva enables the spiritual aspirant to guide others' minds who suffer from different psychic ailments. So many people in this world are crying in pain and agony. So many miseries and afflictions have paralyzed human beings physically and mentally. In leading this afflicted humanity to their physical progress and psychic well-being, this occult power of Ishitva will help you tremendously. It can be achieved through positive microvita, which in turn is acquired through the regular practice of cult. By sitting idle and crying constantly, one cannot achieve this. Vashvitva. This special type of occult power helps a person to bring defective ideas, or people goaded by defective ideas, onto the path of supreme greatness. If people are to be guided towards their definite progress, they will first have to be brought under one's control. If such people work haphazardly and do not follow the right path, they cannot be expected to reach the state of welfare. So if you really want to help people, you will have to bring them under control and then direct them along the path to their goal. This occult power can be achieved through positive microvita. Prakamya, or the right mode of thinking aimed at promoting universal welfare, brings light to the entire universe. Through this occult power, spiritual aspirants acquire what is needed to serve the entire world. Prapti means helping oneself and helping the souls of so many people to acquire and be benefited by the grace of the Supreme. And the eighth one is Antarya Mitva, to be able to enter within the ectoplasmic or endoplasmic structures of others, and thereby know the pains and pleasures, the hopes, aspirations, and longings of others to guide them properly. It is somewhat like the transmigration of souls. Regarding this eighth occult power, spiritual cult alone will not suffice. It requires the special grace of Paramapurusha. And there is yet another occult power, the power of omniscience, to be all-knowing. This power of omniscience cannot be achieved only through the practice of cult, nor with the help of positive microvita. One must reach the height of devotion and achieve the grace of the Supreme. Otherwise, even if people dash their heads against a wall, they cannot acquire omniscience with the help of positive microvita. And above all occult powers is the supreme knowledge, ensconcement or establishment in Paramapurusha. This is not only a sort of omniscience, rather it elevates the aspirant to be one with the supreme cognitive faculty. Of course, those who are already endowed with devotion will automatically acquire this power. So what I found to be the most interesting thing about this discourse is that it presents all the occult powers in terms of how they help us to serve humanity. And there's some mention of how it helps us to achieve our own spiritual progress also. And I think this is the proper and interesting way to think about occult powers. It also says that these powers come as a result of doing our spiritual practice, our spiritual cult. As we do our spiritual practice, it attracts positive microvita. Another way of talking about that is it attracts the grace of the Supreme Consciousness. And through that positive microvita, we gain these powers that help us do the work that we need to do. At the very beginning, it explains the word cult, which is usually used in modern usage. It means something negative. But here it's relationship to cultivate one's devotion, to cultivate one's spirituality, and explains that only those cults which are aimed, which lead towards the Supreme Consciousness are what can be properly called a cult. Anything which aims towards anything material is not a proper cult. It explains that if the cult is spiritually focused, it is a proper cult, then it creates this kind of subtlety in the mind. And when that mind becomes subtle, then we receive the help from positive microvita. And what is this help that we receive when our minds become subtle? The help that we receive is these powers that help us do our spiritual practice, help us understand subtle ideas, both in ourself, which benefits our own spiritual practice, but also in others, to understand the subtleties of their minds and their problems and the things that they are going through, to understand deep ideas, to understand solutions to humanity's problems, to feel sympathy and empathy. All this deep level of sympathy and empathy is a kind of occult power. The ability to enter deep into a person's mind, feel their sorrows and sufferings, and the ability to understand the subtle solutions that will help those people. Then some kind of capacity to control others and direct them in the right path is necessary. Lots of people are confused, running in the wrong direction, and if you don't have enough mental force that you can kind of help them see that and give them the right direction, then you won't really be able to help them. There's a couple of occult powers that I think have a very clear relationship to the practices that we do. The first one mentioned was anima, converting one's psychic existence into a small point and then transforming it into a minimum entity. So when we practice the aspect of our meditation where we withdraw the mind from the world and we focus in a point and we shrink ourselves down to this tiny point, well, it seems to me at any rate that this is a practice which is developing that capacity. And it says that until you can do that, one cannot move or dance according to the wavelengths of the particular idea or ideas. So we can't enter into others' minds, and we can't enter into the experience of the Supreme Consciousness, which is very subtle, right? So as long as our ego is big and our mind is distracted and the radius of our, kind of mental agitation is big, that blocks us from entering into both spiritual, deep, subtle spiritual ideas, oneness with Paramapurusha, but also other people's sufferings, understanding anything from the inside, right? Then the quality of lagima means that the mind becomes light. In another discourse, our guru mentions, Shrii Shrii Anandamurti mentions that in order for the mind to become subtle and to see things clearly, deep, clear vision is impossible when the mind is loaded up with material desires and objects and mental objects. So that kind of, when the mind is very materialistic and full of material things, when it's not detached, it's kind of like a boat full of water and it can't float because it's so heavy. But if you can have detachment, if you can let go of those things, let go of all those materialistic thinking, then the mind becomes light and capable of thinking properly, right? It can't think properly when it's kind of heavy and weighed down. And then it says, unless you understand how much pain and sorrow is accumulated in others' minds, you cannot free them, you cannot alleviate their sorrows and sufferings. In another discourse, he explains it in a similar way. Lagima, to become light. A light body can fly through air. A light mind can study the minds of others. The third one is mahima, or expansion of mind. So when the mind becomes vastly expanded, we have this sense of universalism, of a sense of connection and identity with the whole of creation. Everything is me, everything is one, I am one with everyone, and everything, all are my brothers and sisters. As it says here, unity in variety, unity in diversity. By associating our benevolent thoughts with each and every entity, we will contribute to universal progress and prosperity. So all the occult powers, which we normally think of as, something creepy or something used to hurt others, here it's being shown how they are properly used to enable us to contribute to universal progress and prosperity, to help others. In a similar discourse on the same occult powers, mahima, to become large, an expanded mind is omniscient and feels love for the universe. So that's the basic idea. We are not to seek occult powers as a goal in themselves, which people normally do if they come to sadhana with some kind of material purpose. I want to acquire powers for achieving my own ends. We don't aim at that. We aim at pleasing Paramapurusha, at serving others, at devotion. But as we do our spiritual practices with that goal, we are graced with certain powers that help us do our work better, our own spiritual work, and serving the universe. So I thought that was very interesting and inspiring, and a proper spiritual outlook on what are the occult powers and what are they for. I hope you found that interesting and helpful, and thank you very much for joining. Have a good week. Namaskar.